Hello and welcome to this episode of Kennedy Saves the World. It is a very interesting time we are living in because there is so much crazy. There's so much different kinds of crazy, and there's crazy in every realm. And I'm not talking about mental illness, although there is plenty of that. I'm talking about just people are nuts. People are not just mentally ill. It is not just that. It is not just that there is a dearth of mental health care professionals willing and able to treat people who are most in need. That may certainly be part of the problem, but just in general, there has been a universal shift to the nut bar side of the spectrum, and you all know exactly what I'm talking about. I will give you two examples from yesterday and something that I read today and a little something from politics. So yesterday I was on my way to the subway and there was a man, clearly homeless, clearly mentally ill, in a wheelchair with his eyes rolling back in his head, and he was panting like a dog, making guttural noises as though he were possessed. And it scared the living crap out of me to the point where I didn't even want to video him on my phone because I was like, what if he's just pure evil? What if he is the personification of pure evil and he gets into my phone and then I can't get rid of it because I am half Romanian, my mom's from Transylvania, and I'm very superstitious about those things. So I didn't want to video the guy even though I wanted to show people, and I'm having a hard time even telling you this right now. So that was number one. And you see a lot of that in New York. You see a lot of that in big cities. And, you know, it's not for a lack of taxes. I was walking to the subway thinking to myself, we pay so much in taxes, and the idea that rich people don't pay their fair share, especially in places like New York, is absolute hogwash. It is not true. There is not a revenue problem in this country. The problem is it's bureaucracy and redundancy and unions, and, you know, good money goes to the wrong places, and people with bad agendas are somehow able to capitalize on that and keep the money for themselves. It's a bad setup and it's a bad system. And so that guy that I saw today, I'll give you another example. And this was not mental illness. Well, no, maybe it was mental illness. I take that back. There was a guy on the subway. All I could see is that he was wearing a coat and he had completely bare legs. I did not look to see if there was exposed ween, because that always makes me very uncomfortable, because as I raised my daughters to know, if a man is naked from the waist down in public, this is a rule of thumb. This is an axiom in the Kennedy family. If a man is naked from the waist down in public, he will without fail throw his poo. So avoid him. So I did not want to see ween, because then I would have known we were dealing with a poo thrower. But I did see his legs were covered in warty corpuscles, sores, like a raised rash, layers and layers of raised scabby rash all over his legs. So I found two police officers at the top of the platform, and I said, there's a man down there who clearly needs help. And they said, we talk to him every day. He will not accept help. He has enough wherewithal, enough cogency that we cannot forcibly restrain him and take him somewhere to fix his warty corpuscle legs. And I was like, what if it's contagious? And they thought about it for a second. They went, yeah. And that was that. I just went about my day. But again, this is not unique to New York. I'm sure in San Francisco, you're seeing much worse. LA, you don't interact with people as closely as you do on the subway in New York City. You don't make eye contact with people. You don't bump up against people like you do in New York. But you see it. You absolutely see the crazy. So then the next crazy person I saw on the subway was a guy, very handsome, tall and thin, looked like Tyler, the Creator. He was wearing nice enough clothes that he did not look homeless. He was wearing very nice shoes. But his sweatpants, his pink sweatpants were stained. So, he was obviously off, and he just kept going. He was speaking to the subway train car as though he were giving a TED Talk. And he was like, okay, raise your hands. Who has had deja vu? And I wanted to be like, me? I totally have, like a bunch of times. But, it's like, I know better than to make myself known. You don't make eye contact because, again, you never know when someone's going to throw their poo. And that is really the worst thing that can happen on a train. That is worse than Ebola. And then he starts going, who's the time traveler? Go ahead and identify yourself. I know you all know the future me. And I was like, oh boy, here we go. And then he goes, and this is one of the kickers. He goes, fine, shoot me now. And I'm thinking, please don't. Don't shoot anyone. Don't shoot him. No, let's not shoot people. That's not where we're at with this. We're just at garden variety, scary crazy, because that's a scary crazy. If you've been in this situation, you know, like people kind of silently look and make eye contact with each other, you know, looking for the good ones and the guardians. I was sitting next to a strong, massive man, so I felt pretty good about my chances. I would have just hidden in his belly girth if it really went down. And then he's like, I don't know if I'm Satan. I don't know if I'm Satan. I might be. And if I am, you have to kneel down to me. And I was like, what do I do? I only have 2 stops. Do I get off at one stop and try and make the next car because I'm not going to make that? Or do I just wait it out and hope for the best because it's a pretty crowded train and there were a lot of big strapping men on the train? So again, I felt pretty good about my chances because I would have just run behind them. So I got off the train. I was like, well, there's another one. And by the way, you talk to people in New York, not even scratching the surface. I will walk out into this hallway, every single person who's out there. And we have an open cubicle system here at Fox News Radio Podcast where everyone will have a story where they will out crazy me. So then, and this is when you know the Matrix is possibly real because maybe we are the time travelers. Maybe I'm the time traveler. And maybe I should have said, Tyler, the creator, I've met your future self. You will be bankrupt and you will have a very low credit score. And you will be so annoying, you won't have a partner and I'm sad for you. But I didn't say that because, again, I would have made myself a target. I'm reading a New York Post story and then a Vanity Fair article that correlated to it about a writer on Grey's Anatomy who faked her own cancer. And then faked getting a kidney transplant, and then faked a suicide, and then said a good friend of hers was in the Tree of Life synagogue shooting in Pennsylvania, and the FBI let her clean the remains off the floor. Pretty much all of it a lie. The cancer was totally a lie. So this woman who got her job on Grey's Anatomy because she was an ongoing cancer patient who supposedly had, one of the most rare and fatal forms of bone cancer that is essentially untreatable. She would go to work, she would paint her skin yellow and green, and then put bad cover-up over it to make it seem like, I'm just covering up my cancer pallor. And then she would go in the bathroom and retch loudly and make it sound like she was vomiting. And then she would come out, she'd be like, no, I'm okay. I can keep working. And it was like clearly Munchausen syndrome, but also one of the most annoying people in the world, according to this article, gets Munchausen and then, just keeps going with it. So eventually her partner, she was in the middle of a divorce. This woman's name was Elizabeth Finch, the writer for Grey's Anatomy with a fake cancer. She married a woman named Jennifer. They were going through a contentious divorce. And, hell hath no fury, like a lesbian divorcee scorned. So she sent an email to Shonda Rhimes and was like, she's lying. She never had cancer. I know she doesn't have cancer. Everyone knows she doesn't have cancer. It's all a lie. And it unraveled into, and now there's going to be a special about it on Peacock, but that takes such a special amount of absolute insanity, and it just makes me ask, when did we lose our bearings? When did people stop checking in with themselves going, maybe I'm the ass? Because we obviously need to do much, much more of that. And, I go back to one of the very first things you learn in your first philosophy class. It's one of the very first things you learn. It's a quote from Socrates through Plato, because Socrates didn't write anything down. Plato wrote the Socratic dialogues. The unexamined life is not worth living. We are not examining our lives yet. We are not truly doing an examination and canceling concerts at the last minute going, but my mental health is not the same thing as examining your own life. Because you have people who are addicted to dopamine, who also happen to be narcissists, who are fueling this need to advertise mental illness on billboards, which is not the same thing as checking in with yourself. It is not the same thing as examining your own life. It is certainly not the same thing as soul searching, because in the Jewish faith, when you do a good act, it is called a mitzvah. That is a good thing that you do for someone else, and you don't do it for recognition. You do it silently. You don't go out and say, I did a mitzvah, aren't I the best? Because it negates the mitzvah. Then you don't have any good mitzvah points. So that's what people are doing. Like, they're advertising their mental health distress, which on one hand is good. And Kat Timpf made a very, very good point about this in one of the chapters of her book. And it's not that people are unwell, because that's patently obvious. It's that people aren't doing their part in the personal assessment, the checking in with themselves, the examination, so they can truly get better. Because advertising what's wrong doesn't make it right. And for some people and for some mental illness, it never goes away. But that's not the point. The point is you do the hard work. You do the boring stuff. You do the stuff that doesn't get you recognition in order to live a better life, in order to settle into yourself and have some sense of moderation in your life and some sense of meeting and some sense of mindfulness. And all of those things working together will have a ripple effect. And again, it is boring. But because so many people have gotten so addicted to the drama and the narcissism and the dopamine, when that metastasizes into full mental illness, we are on the verge of a societal crisis. And, the problem is fixing it is not sexy. But we have to fix it, and you can't fix other people. But you can certainly work on yourself and do your part. And of course, have empathy. And of course, do mitzvahs every day. And, don't necessarily look for other people to throw you a parade when you do. Get back to nature. Be mindful. Like, part of mindfulness is being tactile. Get off your screen for a little while. Have interactions. Write a letter. Make something with your hands. Go get dirty. And then we can all get together and we can talk about how to make things better. Because I admit to you, I may be the craziest of all. I had an ongoing dream 3 nights ago that I had a long conversation with my dead grandfather, whom I've never met. So maybe, after all, I'm the crazy one. So when it comes to self-examination, I'll be the first one to start. This has been Kennedy Saves the World. I'm Kennedy. Listen ad-free with a Fox News Podcast Plus subscription on Apple Podcasts, and Amazon Prime members can listen to this show ad-free on the Amazon Music app.
Oh, go ahead and leave me a review while you're there. I'd love to hear what you have to say. You've been listening to Kennedy Saves the World on the Fox News Podcast Network.